Spectrovision Radio.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
I'm Ryan Sprague, and you are now somewhere in the skies. Welcome to Somewhere in the Skies. I am your host, Ryan Sprague. Has Hollywood been chosen to be the form of UFO disclosure we all want and need? We ask that question of our guests this week, Bryce Zabel, Brent Friedman, filmmakers. They have both been in the Hollywood scene for a very long time, and they have a very interesting history when it comes to possibly being involved in some of that UFO disclosure. We have the brand new Steven Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day, coming out this June. So we talk about all of it with Bryce Zabel and Brent Friedman, and all about their brand new podcast, Sound, Light, and Frequency, premiering February 19th. It was a fascinating conversation. We are the first to interview both of them in the same room together. So I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode, and be sure to subscribe to Sound, Light, and Frequency wherever you get your podcasts. While you're at it, give us a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We would certainly appreciate that. But let's get to it. Bryce Zabel, Brent Friedman, let's go. All right, welcome to Somewhere in the Skies, and welcome to a veteran guest and a first-time guest. I'm so excited to talk about their new podcast today, Sound, Light, and Frequency, which will be premiering very soon, February 19th. We have with us today the one and only Bryce Zabel and new guest, Brent Friedman. Welcome to Somewhere in the Skies, guys.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be the noob.
Yes.
And this is so cool to have you both in the same room together. I mean, does this happen often?
Not really. This man over here lives in, well, let's just say the Seattle area.
Yeah, I live on an island up in Puget Sound.
And I live in Los Angeles. So you travel a lot. So that's how we end up together. But this is the only time. I mean, I don't know if it works technically, but this is the only time you're going to see the two of us together in the same screen, probably.
Yeah, I'm so honored.
Congratulations. You've scored a first and you've barely started.
I know. Coming out of the game.
That's good news.
Well, Bryce, I mean, we've spent some time together. You've been on the show before. We spent some time together in Shag Harbor. You will be featured in an upcoming documentary of mine that I'm producing out of Nova Scotia. But I know you guys have a pretty strong history together. You know, if anyone knows the work you've done, you know both of your names. But for any of our listeners, viewers who might be new to both of you, we always have new people, younger people getting involved in the UFO topic and finding the show. It still astounds me to this day when I find like 20-year-olds reaching out to me on like TikTok and whatnot and being like, hey, I just saw your episode on, you know, the Rendlesham Forest incident or what have you.
I mean, I have food in my refrigerator that's older than those people probably, but
oh, I love that. Me too.
Listen,
I'm
Ryan,
no longer. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say,
ahead.
I'm no longer considered the young gun in ufology, and that is depressing, my friend. That is very depressing.
I have to say, to me, you're still a young gun. You'll always be a young gun. So there you go. Listen, I'm thrilled to be able to introduce my partner Brent here because Brent and I go back over 30 years. We actually created the Dark Skies series for NBC, which is part of the impetus for our Sound, Light, and Frequency podcast. And we've stayed in touch over the years. We've become good friends, and we also have done other projects together. So, ladies and gentlemen, Brent Friedman.
Yes. Well, my background is different than Bryce's, who started off as a CNN journalist. Mine is much less credible. I started off when I came to Hollywood doing, B movies, features, creature features, and stuff like that. I was really into that genre. And it was by serendipity that Bryce and I connected. What happened was my wife at the time was working as an assistant for him when he was on a TV show, and happened to notice a whole bunch of UFO books on his bookshelf and said, "Oh, my husband has a really interesting story related to UFOs." And Bryce very generously said, "Oh, I'd love to meet him." And that lunch that we had together was quite fateful in that we shared some stories. He told me about things that he had been working on, and I told him about this thing that had happened to me. And we decided, let's do something together. And that was kind of the birth of our collaboration. And as Bryce said, it's been decades now, and we keep working on things over the years. And it's been a really fun and fruitful collaboration.
Hey, Ryan, just for your audience, as you said, not everybody knows everybody. So Brent is correct. I started as a CNN correspondent, TV guy, came to Los Angeles to do that, worked as an investigative reporter for PBS, and then basically realized that the shows I was on were going to always be canceled. And my wife said, "Why don't you try writing a screenplay?" So I did and sold it. And then, of course, all those shows get canceled over the years. So I've been canceled a lot. Talking about cancel culture, I'm an expert on it.
The OG, yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of went Hollywood, after that period of time. And I said, I'm going to keep doing this as long as they keep paying me. And they kept paying me. So I've been doing it. But now, kind of recently, I've had the ability to sort of pivot where I use a little bit of both worlds. And nothing is better to explain that than this podcast we're doing starting February 19th called Sound, Light, and Frequency, because it is about the intersection of Hollywood, UFOs, and sometimes government. So I have to put on the journalism side of my aspect to try to understand that. But at the same time, the experience I've had in Hollywood also informs it. And I think that well, first of all, I'm pretty sure it's a show I haven't seen before. That's what I always try to do as a creator, is say, well, have I seen this before, or is this something new? I think we got something new here.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing is that us coming together to create Dark Skies was an inception point for a lot of strangeness, right? Anyone that has experienced the phenomenon firsthand knows that when you put your attention on issues of UFOs and aliens and whatnot, that things come to you, whether you want them or not. And so that started a whole series of incidents, right? Going back to kind of the creation of Dark Skies, the production of Dark Skies, and to some degree, things have continued on for the decades since. And one of the other key differences between Bryce and I is that I'm an experiencer, and I have been since I was a kid. I touch on a lot of those things in our podcast, right? But what it does is it presents a very interesting point of view because, Bryce, to use the X-Files analogy, is the sexy skeptic, and I'm the brooding weirdo, right? Yeah. And so we're coming at the investigation that we're undertaking from two very different points of view, right? I tend to believe and also to empathize with people who have had experiences, right? That doesn't mean that I don't have skepticism and I'm not looking for credibility, but I think Bryce is also coming at it from a much more kind of intellectual and cerebral standpoint, looking for the facts and looking for the truth. And so I think it, based on our recordings so far for the podcast, it creates a really fun dynamic. It's not that we're going at each other, But, you know, as we're putting some movies and TV shows kind of in front of us and talking about them and what it all means, there's a little bit of X-Files and there's a little bit of Siskel and Ebert, right?
Yeah. Which is also those 20-year-olds will never understand, but they were a movie review duo that didn't get along, but still did a show together. We actually get along, so we're not quite Siskel and Ebert. And, you know, by the way, on the experiencer thing, it's very interesting. Brent is a classic experiencer, I guess, in the UFO world's version of it. But I like to think I'm an experiencer of other things. In other words, over the course of time, for over I get for 30 years at least, every time I've been on a new job here in Hollywood, I always ask people what they think about UFOs. And I've talked to lots of people about it. So, for example, I've talked to Stan Lee about UFOs. We both worked for Spielberg at different times. I worked on Taken with him and got to talk UFOs at length with him. Right. I ended up debating UFOs with Carl Sagan in a parking lot once. So we like to think that we have kind of a mutual amount of experience and we go back and forth. But the portal for all our work is to say, what are these movies and TV shows that involve alien life forms or non-human intelligence, if you will, and some of them? What are they trying to say? Was there a backstory to them that got them made in the first place? Are they accurate about what we suspect might be going on in the world of UFOs? So the whole thing, like I said, lots of podcasts, and you're a great example. You and I have talked, Ryan, about UFOs and Hollywood and those experiences. But that was probably a special episode for you. So that was the dessert on your show. On our show, it's the main course, right? That's what we do for our show. So we're looking forward to it. And as Brent said, we've already recorded some of them. And wow, it's just a fresh new way to do it. As you know very well, I've been doing the show called Need to Know for several years now, first with Ross Coulthart, currently with Richard Dolan. And that's basically kind of journalism and history and what's going on, who's testifying before Congress and that kind of thing. And that has a great place. You do it very well. Lots of other people are doing it as well, too. But we want to create our own space here where if we talk about things like congressional testimony and all that, we're apt to invoke the Godfather when Michael Corleone testifies before Congress, right? I mean, we're just more likely to use the prism of Hollywood to see the kind of experiences that people have had in this regard.
Right. Well, and I think it's important too. I mean, we're living in a world where, you know, at the Super Bowl recently in the US, you had the premiere of a new trailer for Steven Spielberg's upcoming UFO movie, which I do want to ask you guys about later in the conversation. But I agree, Bryce. I mean, you know, as someone who has been in the entertainment industry as well for a long time, I was trying to find ways of how I could use my skills, my inside look at that industry, and somehow correlate that to UFOs. For me, it came in the form of theater. As you know, Bryce, I'm a trained playwright. I lived in New York City for, 15 years as a struggling and somewhat successful playwright, I guess. But yeah, writing plays that had to do with UFOs and trying to introduce the topic to another brand new audience. And I think that's really cool what you guys are doing is you have that expertise and you have that knowledge. I mean, having created something like Dark Skies, which has a crazy history, which I know you tease, not tease, you do a full breakdown of how the government may have gotten their hands a little bit into what you guys were doing, even back then. Right?
I'm going to tee Brent up for this, but because I feel like it was a long time ago. Dark Skies was an NBC series. We produced 20 hours of programming about it. And it was an alien invasion series, which sounds like, yeah, well, I've seen those before. But this one took place in the 1960s. And in the pilot, literally, our main character gets a piece of the Roswell wreckage to President Kennedy, who plans in his second term to announce Roswell's reality. And of course, he ends up dead at the end of our pilot. So our TV series about this alien invasion takes place below the surface of what you think is the news of the day, and we're telling a story about the sort of the dark underbelly. And in fact, the TV series every week, somebody reviewed it when it went out, and they said it was the most subversive show on TV because every single episode, we basically said history is a lie. Mm-hmm. That if you think you know what happened in recent history, yeah, sort of, but a lot of it's not the way you imagine it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the topic of history is very interesting because we have our personal history, right? Where, as I mentioned, I'm an experiencer and as a writer, the inciting incident is critical, right, to storytelling. It's where the thing that happens that sets characters off on a new path, right? For me, I had my own personal inciting incident when I was 18, when a member of the Reagan administration disclosed to me that aliens are real and they're here and that he'd seen them.
Which, by the way, not to bury the lead, but when you were talking about how you and I first met, it was at this Italian restaurant in Universal City. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about this movie I'd just done called Official Denial for the Sci-Fi Channel that was mm-hmm. about a UFO crash and the aftermath of it. And then Brent tells me this story. I didn't even know the guy at that time that I met. I remember what I first thought. I thought, I don't know if this story is true, but whether it's true or not, I want to work with this guy because he's a great storyteller. Now, I've come to believe without any doubt that it's a true story. And that is a big part of our show.
Absolutely. Wow. And look, you're closer to 18 than I am, but imagine if you were 18, right? Just a teenager, like minding your own business, and somebody that was a trusted family friend that you'd known for years disclosed that to you, right? Well, obviously, even at the time that this happened to me, when I was 18, my brain couldn't process it, right? Yeah. I'm like, what do you do with that information? And so I kind of sat on it for a long time. I didn't know how to deal with it. And it wasn't really until I talked to Bryce that I realized, oh, well, here's a kindred spirit, but here's also an outlet of something I can do with this story. And it led us down the path of not just creating the show, but taking this idea that we're going to take some of the truths that we've been given and use the cover of fiction, right, to create this alternate reality for a way to go back, for people to look back on history and say, wait a minute, what if what we thought happened was not the truth at all? And create, by starting in the 60s and like Bryce said, with the JFK event, start putting doubt in people's minds about the truth that they think we are living in.
And here's the, Ryan, the essence of the show is that's a story. Like I said, Brent told me that story, and you've now got a taste of it. And we have talked about it obliquely over the years, but we finally decided the time is right to take a full-on jump into the pool. And so Sound, Light, and Frequency, which, as you pointed out, debuts on February 19th. It's an iHeart podcast. We're doing 36 episodes. And when it debuts, Brent's going to tell the whole story and some stuff that we have discovered in the years intervening about why we think that is an extremely credible story. That's actually the 4th episode in our show. Mm-hmm. But what I want to just put in your listeners' minds right now is the very first episode we do is called Party Crasher. And that's the one that people have heard most about, but we actually haven't ever told the entire unvarnished story from his point of view and my point of view. And that's when we were debuting the Dark Skies TV series. And we had a party in my backyard, same house I'm in right now, right out there, 200 people there, cast, crew, that kind of thing. And a guy crashed the party, told me and Brent that he was from the Office of Naval Intelligence, and they wanted to make a deal with us to incorporate certain ideas that they might have into our show. So that's kind of the impetus. That's episode 1. And from that is our rock in the pool that has caused us to look at Sound, Light, and Frequency. It's probably a popular term, but for a good reason. We think it's an active investigation. In other words, Ryan, when we start to talk about it in this podcast, we're not claiming we know everything or that we know everybody. We're simply claiming that we've had an experience. We take it seriously, and we are going to look into it with whatever skills we have, with whatever connections we have. And iHeart fell in love with that idea. They thought that that's exactly what we should do. So we've rolled up our sleeves, and we're taking on some stuff that we haven't heard talked about very often.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Brent. Oh, no, I was going to mention you guys were gracious enough to send me the first 4 episodes. And I was like clung to my headphones. I mean, I'm currently in another country. I mean, it's on my social media. I'm in Japan, and I'm taking flights. I'm taking bullet trains. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I'm just listening to your show. And I almost missed my train because I was listening. I think it was episode 3. So I mean, yeah, I want people to know this isn't just you guys reflecting on the past. This is a current investigation because of the discourse we're having now in the field, which again, I will get to in a little bit, the UFO narrative, as it were.
Sure.
But Brent, please continue. I stepped on your toes.
What I was going to say is that, our approach is based on first our experience, right? A guy shows up and makes us this deal or proposes a deal to us. If you step back from that and you ask the question, were we the only ones in Hollywood ever that was approached about a deal?
Not likely.
I mean, if you just kind of put that under the microscope, you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. So then it raises the question, well, who else might have been offered a deal, right? That might have informed what the movie became or the TV series became, right? And so that also raises another interesting question. Let's assume that that is actually some sort of government initiative, that they have been working with Hollywood behind the scenes in different capacities. Is it part of a disclosure program, which is what was presented to us? There was going to be part of a slow drip disclosure program. Or is it really, though, part of a disinformation campaign, right? And so we don't have that answer, right? But maybe as we go through the course of our podcast, we're going to start to see patterns emerge, and we're going to start to possibly be able to make an educated guess, right, about what all of this means. But I think that we can all agree that the media is one of the most powerful tools that anyone can wield, right? So at the highest level, you have to believe that we've all seen different forms of media manipulation. Why wouldn't they use the media in some capacity to control the UFO narrative that you were just talking about?
Yeah.
What that all means and who was involved? Well, listen to our podcast.
Ryan, I have to just harken back to, I have got this image of you on a Japanese bullet train. Then, listening to our podcast, and I mean, thank you. That is such an evocative image. I'm kind of actually curious because, you are, just so you know, you are the first interview that we have done. We're rolling it out on the 19th, and we haven't done any interviews. You're the guy. So my question is, if listening to those episodes, what do you think the show is about? What stood out to you and made you say, I would listen to this again, or even if you wouldn't? I mean, what was your take on it as you heard it?
Right. Again, I think people in any walk of life will take something away from what you guys are doing. For the more UFO historians out there, they're going to love hearing these stories about, these almost mythical things that we've heard for decades, of Independence Day, like Area 51 influenced how they perceived that in that movie, or, the FBI agents in the X-Files, or, what happened with you guys. And I love that aspect of it. But I also love the forward thinking that you guys are doing of, okay, this happened to us. What about these other people? And the beautiful thing about this is people in Hollywood are going to listen to your podcast, not just UFO buffs or UFO enthusiasts. And that's going to trigger something in them like, you know what? I was in that one pitch meeting about that
Yes.
UFO thing, and there were people in that room that I did not recognize. What the hell was going on there? Or I happened to go to this UFO conference thing just for fun, and then, but you know what? I think there were people there for other reasons, keeping tabs on the information being said at these sorts of things. So I love this idea of kind of putting that in our minds, because now I'm thinking to myself, have I ever had a situation like that in all my years of researching UFOs? And, it's gotten to that point in my research where I am now talking to the people at the Department of Defense. I am going out for beers with someone like a Luis Elizondo or these former intelligence people that we know about in the UFO field. And you start thinking a little differently about, what do I want from them? What do they want from me? Do we all want the same thing? Or is there something completely under the surface, as you said, Bryce, going on here? So your podcast got me a little paranoid, which I think is good. I think it's good to be cautious and careful.
Yes. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, okay.
But I want to kind of throw that back to you, Bryce, with the title of the podcast. Rewind for just a sec. Of what does the title mean, and what might that have to do with this? What we're talking about right here.
That's a terrific question that I'll be dodging in a second. No.
Okay.
What I was going to say, I just wanted to react to something that you were saying, which is one of the things that we think might happen is we may, because we're doing the podcast, stumble across things. I mean, right now, America at least is compelled by the disappearance of Savannah Guthrie's mother, and there are tip lines where people are calling in. They're getting 18,000 tips or whatever, and they have to run through them. Well, we think one of the things that's going to happen as we start to tell this story and raise these issues is that some people, like you said, who have had experiences or had questions or whatever, may call us, and we may find out that there are people who had a roughly similar experience to ourselves, and we'll want to talk to them and compare notes. And then, because we have a podcast, it won't just end there. Then we'll run it past the people who are listening. So maybe there'll be some guests on that are particularly interesting. But to answer your question about sound, light, and frequency, which we admit is kind of an interesting title, the first thing I would say is, well, if you think about movies and TV, everything in movies and TV is sound, light, and frequency. So we have that, but that's not why it's called sound, light, and frequency. And Brent, I'm going to give you the floor for that one.
Well, remember our party crasher, when he approached us, he said something very enigmatic to us at the very end, and even left us with something that, it's hard to explain this without going
no
into
spoilers.
Without
spoiler
going into
alert.
The whole story.
Spoiler alert.
but he used that phrase, sound, light, and frequency, in a certain capacity that was very provocative. And he ended up drawing us what we call kind of an artifact, the formula, whatever you want to say, the envelope, that together with that phrase creates an ongoing mystery, right? So again, as a writer, you'll understand one of the subplots of our podcast is we are still actively trying to understand and investigate what both that phrase means and what that kind of strange formula was that we were given.
Okay, Brent, you've already spoiled the spoiler alert here. No, actually, I'm cutting this guy off right now because the one thing I was going to say though is we're not going to be cute about it. Before you get to the end of the first episode, you will know exactly why it's called sound, light, and frequency. And you will have some opinions about that. And then you will see that sound, light, and frequency isn't just the title of a podcast. It's also the title of an investigation. All right. So I guess that's the only way I would put it right now. And that's about as far as we can go. However, you don't have to wait long to hear that. February 19th is literally just around the corner here, a few days from when this will be airing. So yeah, we're good with that.
I love that. Yeah. And again, it's not just a podcast about is the government, using the media to try to put out a certain narrative or to disclose the truth about UFOs. You guys are actively asking the bigger questions. What are UFOs? Where did they come from? What did they want? Why did they have such a impact on us in pop culture? There are so many reasons for that. And that's what I love about this topic is it's not even what are the UFOs? It always puts that mirror back on us as the human beings, which I think you guys do great as well in the show.
And Ryan, here's something that's very personal to you. You've written some, a couple, I think 2 books now, haven't you? Right? Yep. You've written 2 books, and you also have focused quite a lot on what witnesses actually say. And so you'll know this is true. Quite often when witnesses are describing what they had either encountered or saw in the sky or whatever, they'll use the phrase, "It was like being in a movie, man." It was
all the time.
I thought right? And so that is kind of interesting. Whether we wanted it to be true or not, there is kind of a intersection, a diving together of these 2 topics, the UFO and the Hollywood thing, that are inextricably linked. And so part of our mission statement is to pull those apart and see them, each one, for what they are. Because the people who are saying it was like being in a movie, that's true, but it doesn't mean that what they saw didn't happen. They saw something really happen. And so when Hollywood, and that would be people like us and all our friends and other people, start to research this topic, which is more in the news than ever before in my lifetime, right? Then if you're a screenwriter or a producer or a director, you are more and more compelled to wanting to tell stories about this topic. And so the reality of what's going on and the reality of what gets on the screen are going to remain things that we think should be talked about, because as you mentioned, well, first of all, there are multiple UFO projects going on around town, which is good. Some of them are even ours. But at the same time, Mr. Spielberg is coming in with the big daddy of them all, with his film Disclosure Day, which will be out on June 12th. And, that's why we made Spielberg the subject of our 2nd episode. It's called Mr. Close Encounters, because on the subject of deals, I won't spoil the entirety of that episode, but people have been saying for years, I wonder if Spielberg was briefed in. And by briefed in, they mean the government took him aside and said, "Okay, Stephen, here's this and that and the other thing. Now go put it in Close Encounters and call it Close Encounters," right? And we don't know, but we are looking into it. And so that's what makes this thing so fascinating. And then in our 3rd episode, which is called Sagan Makes Contact, Carl Sagan was the guy behind the Contact movie. He's a scientist grounded in the real world, but at the same time, he was compelled to talk about first contact with a non-human intelligence. And so all of these, they're just so fascinating. We feel like we could go 10 seasons and we'll never run out of anything. So
yeah.
Well, another just quick example too about how we can go back and look at a movie from several decades ago and find relevant connections to today, right? A perfect example is in our episode 5, we look at The Abyss, right? The Abyss was at the time kind of a groundbreaking movie from one of our top, Hollywood filmmakers in James Cameron. Well, when Bryce and I went back and looked at it, we actually learned a lot, which was the idea of USOs, right? Was everyone thinks, oh, well, that came out with The Abyss. The Abyss was the first kind of movie to put that on the radar. It wasn't. There were other movies in that whole era that also came out with that same idea. But if you go back even further, you realize that H.G. Wells wrote a story at the turn of the 20th century called Into the Abyss, which was quite similar. But now fast forward to congressional hearings where they're talking about USOs, right? Something that for probably a long time before that, no one really took seriously. They thought of The Abyss. Oh, it's that thing like James Cameron did. It's more sci-fi fantasy. Well, wait a minute. But he was talking about something decades ago that now seems to be not just credible, but part of the new lexicon in terms of what the UFO narrative is, right? To the point where now people are saying, well, that's where they're all coming from. They're all coming from underwater. Why was that not part of the conversation for decades, right? So then it just raises the question, well, okay, was James Cameron just prescient? Maybe, right? But then what about H.G. Wells? And what's the lineage of that thinking and that storyline? And how did it suddenly become what's considered fact now in the 21st century? It's very interesting.
It's almost like we feel like if we can blow our own minds every episode, then we'll blow some other minds on the other end of the airwaves. So I think that's the goal, to just take nothing at face value, to look into it, to ask people questions, and to think about it. Because a lot of times you start to read things, there's just so much out there. Like, here's the best example I could give you. I read a lot of UFO books. I've read your books. I've read other people's books. And by the way, people should read your books. They're very good books. And as you read them, in most UFO books, there'll be a reference here, there, or somewhere about movies or TV, and it's a paragraph long. So I'll look at those and I'll go, well, that's interesting, because each one has something, but their whole book isn't about that. It's just about that little piece. So we take that piece and we put it in, we've got files upon files within folders that are within folders that are, it's a whole investigative kind of thing. But you have to do that. That's how you figure out patterns. And I think pattern recognition is kind of a truly important part of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Put it all out on the table, sort it into baskets. Oh, that goes in this basket. That goes in that basket. And then what you'll find quite often is, no, actually it shouldn't be in that basket. It belongs in this basket, right? And so we're doing some of that work so the people on the other end of the podcast don't have to, I guess, because it's time-consuming work. But I got to tell you, I'm enthusiastic about it because it's so intriguing to me to start to see the world through this way. And honestly, I think since the Dark Sky series, Brent and I have been afraid to sort of dive into this, right? We didn't want to get sucked into that world. We had careers and families, right? When you have a family to raise and you got to bring home some money to pay for the baby needs a new pair of shoes kind of thing, right? You don't want to do anything that would taint your ability to have a career. And we were always a little concerned about that. But you get older and you say, screw it. Let's just do this thing. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. You know how many first dates I lost saying I was a ufologist, right? Oh my God. Hey guys, Ryan Sprague here from Somewhere in the Skies. The podcast has always been and always will be completely free for you to listen to. But creating it every week takes a lot of time, research, and resources. And to be honest, it's just never been free for me to create. That's why we built a few simple ways for you to help support the show and keep it going strong. You can join us over on Patreon or through Apple Premium. Both offer the same awesome perks. Ad-free episodes, early access to new content, exclusive bonus shows, and even priority to ask our guests your listener questions. It's a quick and easy way to support what we do for just a few bucks a month. And right now, you can even try Patreon for free for a week to see if it's right for you. To learn more and to join, head over to patreon.com/somewhereskies. That's patreon.com/somewhereskies. Or hit that subscribe button right at the top of your Apple Podcast feed. Thank you so much for listening, for supporting, and as always, keep looking up. You guys mentioned congressional hearings.
Sure.
Now, in the current kind of UAP landscape, that's what everyone's talking about. The bureaucratic stuff, the military, threat. That is like the narrative being pushed right now within the government. So, I would love to know from both of you, what do you guys think of the current state of the UFO discourse, I guess, in the mainstream, when it has to do with, locking on targets and this is breaching national security. It seems to be kind of the antithesis of what ufology was at one point, kind of this more love and light. These are space brothers in a galactic federation. Insert, narrative here. It changes throughout the decades. But what do you guys think of the current narrative out there when it comes to UFOs and possible UFO disclosure, I guess,
Right.
quote unquote, and all of that going on right now? And what does that have to do with your podcast?
It's a great question. And I think it is a through line for our podcast. And I think this is one of the things that when you step back, you can start to trace kind of the cultural narrative, right? So a movie like Close Encounters, right, was those were benevolent aliens, even though there was moments when the little boy was abducted that were very scary. There was some intensity, and the aliens were threatening in that they were more powerful than us. But the end message was, well, but they just want to learn about us, and we're gonna learn with them, right? Then you have a movie like E.T., right? That's also one where the alien itself was presented as, the space brother, right? But then you have movies like Independence Day, where they're coming to destroy everything. All of those stories are emerging from Hollywood. They're all telling very different stories, but at the end of the day, what I think you can take away from all of them is that the aliens are more advanced than us, which obviously is going to put us in a position of being threatened, right? We're the apex predator on Earth. If a higher intelligence with more technological sophistication than us comes to Earth for any reason, we will be threatened. In terms of how does that threat narrative, figure into our philosophy on things, I'm going to speak just for myself. I'll let Bryce speak for him. One of the things that the person who disclosed to me said that really still haunts me to this day was that he said he used to cry himself to sleep every night when he had been disclosed to himself. And I asked him why. And he said, because this is not the world I thought I was bringing my daughters into. And by the way, this was 1981.
Yeah.
Right. And so you take that with some comments by Lou Elizondo, who used the word somber, some of the takes of Jim Semivan, you start to mix all of those things together. And I think there is something that can be threatening about this. On the other hand, we haven't been attacked yet. They haven't pulled an Independence Day on us. So we're living in this world of incongruity where there seemingly is something that could be very threatening, but it hasn't acted upon that with its full force yet. Now, people could say, well, yes, but there are cattle mutilations, there are abductions, there are examples of them doing threatening things. True, but we still live on a planet, right, with at least the illusion of free will. So it's hard to say that there is any certainty around the aliens being threatening.
So free will, Brent, you're basically saying we had no choice but to appear on Ryan's podcast.
It was predetermined.
Yeah. So I have no choice but to listen to me talk about that now because there's no free will for any of us. Listen, Ryan, your question raised, it has two answers. The first answer for me is the movie answer. And, we talked about Spielberg being briefed. Well, just as an insight into that, Brent already alluded to it. He started with Space Brothers in Close Encounters. He's got cuddly scientists in E.T. He's got invading marauders in both War of the Worlds and Falling Skies. And he's got average people trying to get the truth out in Disclosure Day coming up. So if there was a single message, I don't know what it is coming from that. And I think you could argue that about the Hollywood product. However, if you look at the totality of Hollywood product going back to the 1950s, and we continue to, it routinely goes to alien invasion. We're guilty of it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So, and why? Why do that? Is it because that's really what we should be fearful of? Or is it something else a little less problematic? And I would suggest a lot of it can be written off to the fact that Hollywood product needs conflict. And what better conflict could you have than somebody's trying to take the earth away from us? And the other thing is, you don't want to just kill a bunch of human beings, so you make bad aliens and you can kill them. So that explains a certain amount of it. The second part of your question, though, which I'm not going to belabor, but you talk about with what's going on, I don't buy into threat narrative as that makes you bad if you believe into a threat narrative. I mean, the truth is, even Ronald Reagan said back in the 80s about nuclear weapons, trust but verify. So, okay, there is at least one non-human intelligence and maybe multiples interacting with us right now. And they haven't told us what their agenda is. At least I haven't heard it. So that means we should be careful. And that doesn't make you a bad person to say, I'd like more of the facts to come in before I draw any conclusions. So I guess when it comes to, are there real threats? Yeah, I mean, there are. People that come into contact with UFOs quite often can suffer some physical problems. We know that UFOs have been interested in nuclear weapons. So yeah, on one level, you could say, oh, that's because they want to turn them off and they want to save us from destroying the planet. Okay, well, that's one possible example. But then by the same token, you could say, well, they want to turn them all off because it's going to be easier to take the planet away from us if we can't blow up nuclear weapons. So I guess that's a larger question that we could do many episodes about. We're trying to, and I thank you for the question, because what it does is it allows us to sort of delineate why sound, light, and frequency is going to be just another way to look at it. We're all looking at the same problem. This is the problem here, okay? Well, somebody on that side of the room is going to see it differently than somebody behind us or somebody to the side. We're all looking at the same phenomenon, but we're all looking at it through our own prism. Our prism happens to be the Hollywood one. We're looking at it and saying, okay, well, you know what? My puny little human brain cannot comprehend everything that's going on and sort everything out. But from a Hollywood point of view, we have a better chance to get our minds around that and try to make something coherent out of it. So we're, I guess as we wrap up here, we're just trying to be careful commentators. We don't have to investigate everything, because who could? We're just two podcasters. We don't have, millions of dollars in a slush fund to go investigate anything. We're just two guys. So we're going to do the best we can. But what we can do is we, with our, relative experiences, provide some kind of analysis. When knowing what we know about the UFO UAP issue, when we watch a movie, we're going to see it through different eyes. And I got to tell you, that is absolutely what's been happening, because like you, Ryan, and many of the people who are listening, we spent all our lives watching alien movies. I mean, I've watched hundreds of them, right? Yeah, but a lot of them I watched so long ago, I forgot I couldn't tell you any details about them. But in order to do one of our episodes, I end up having movie night. And I'll watch the things that we're going to talk about, and I will have forgotten so many things, and I'll see so many things in a different light, because now I'm looking at that movie and saying, wait, I didn't know that was in this movie. I'll give you a great example. I'm watching War of the Worlds the other day, the Tom Cruise version that Spielberg directed in 2005. And I'd forgotten about how they were sucking blood out of people and then building biological blood tendrils out on the earth. And I thought, that's kind of an oblique reference to the cattle mutilation situation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Where animals are devoid of blood. The blood is literally drained from the carcass. So anyway, I didn't think of that when I was, the first time I'm just watching it going, oh, this is creepy. Oh my God. And now I'm watching it and going, well, that's interesting. It evokes cattle mutilations, which I didn't put in Spielberg's camp at the time. So we're just having a lot of fun. I mean, this is a fun job.
Yeah. I love it. Well, to, I guess, kind of start to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Bryce and Brent. would you want, I know this is, maybe a hard question since you're in the Hollywood world. Is this how you guys would want a disclosure personally? Would you want it to come from Hollywood? I mean, Brent, you've hypothesized in your book After Disclosure of what it might look like. Is it the president? Is it the world leaders coming together? Is it the phenomena itself disclosing itself to the public? Or will it happen through things like these movies and TV shows, some of which you guys have created? Is this the kind of disclosure you envision personally or would want if this was
Brent,
to
I'm a
finally
little
be
concerned about
disclosed?
that question, because asking if Hollywood should be actually a key participant in disclosure is like saying Hollywood should run the world economy or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
God.
we probably shouldn't be in charge of anything, or nobody should count on Hollywood to do the heavy lifting, because the truth is somebody else has more information than we do.
Yeah.
And it's usually not Hollywood, so I don't know. What's your take?
I mean, look, I think, the fun thing to talk about would be like, oh my goodness, we all watched Disclosure Day, on June 12th, and we realize, wait, this is disclosure. They're telling us what's going on. And it's up to us to believe it or not. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's just a movie. But to the point about Hollywood being the one to disclose, I think the problem is that Hollywood is not a trusted communication channel in that regard.
No.
I also think we're living in a world now where it's hard for anyone to trust any communication channel, which then goes to another point you just made, which is maybe it's the phenomenon itself that needs to do the disclosing, right? Maybe it needs to come down from on high, as it were, for it to have any credibility. I mean, my personal opinion is that everything that we're doing, your podcast, our podcast, TVs, movies, books, it's all kind of pushing things in a direction, right? And it's leading to things like more interest from people who just are living their lives, right? It's you're starting to see a trickle down where everyday people have starting to think about this topic, which is leading to congressional leaders saying, we want to have committees that investigate this. And now suddenly those hearings are being broadcast, and it's creating more people and more awareness. I think everything that we're doing, we're pushing towards some point of disclosure. Who it comes from and what it is, I think that is TBD.
Yeah. There's a lot TBD. And honestly, guys, like, it starts with the conversations that you're having on the new podcast. So I have to thank you. It was so refreshing to hear this new show, and I can't wait to hear the rest of it. Again, I was just clung to my seat listening to those first four. I'm like, Bryce, send me more. But obvious last question, guys, before I let you go. I know you're both very busy. Where can we find the show? And what can we expect moving forward?
Well, I'll do where can you find it? It's called Sound, Light, and Frequency. So if you go to where you get your podcasts and you type in those keywords, sound, light, frequency, you'll find it. And that doesn't matter whether you're on Apple or iHeart or Pandora or anywhere. You're going to find it with those three keywords. And if you can remember those three keywords, sound, light, frequency, now just add a .com to the end of them, and you can find our website, which will take you to virtually everything. And so I guess I would say that it's pretty easy to find it. We're actually primarily a podcast that is going to have a video version of it, but it'll be more like this. We're not we don't have that budget of millions to go produce a video version, because one of the things we found instantly, by the way, Ryan, is we don't have clips, because clips cost a ton of money. So it's, we analyze, we don't clip. But I think that's good, actually, because you can see clips everywhere. So that's where you're going to find it. You can go to our website. They'll always have that stuff, soundlightfrequency.com, or where you get your podcasts. It's an iHeart podcast.
Yeah. The thing that I will add to that is our season 1 is 36 episodes, right?
Ooh.
And so each episode,
Ouch.
as Bryce
Love
mentioned, is we have a portal, right? So episode 1, our portal is Dark Skies. That takes us into the world and our personal experience. Episode 2, as we mentioned, it's Close Encounters. But once we get into that portal, we start having that discussion, it leads to other movies and other TV shows. We start to find connections and whatnot. So we are going to cover a lot of ground. Now, fortunately, as Bryce said, there's hundreds and hundreds of movies and TV shows that are going to be, that's our playground, if you will, that we can go out and find all of these interesting stories and connections. Every week, a new episode will come out, and we will take you into a whole new part of the act of investigation. The last thing I want to add here is that, again, as an experiencer, my personal agenda, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast after a lot of years of sitting on both the story of Dark Skies and the Party Crasher and everything else, my own disclosure experience, is I wanted to tell everything. And I have a personal belief, which I'm still trying to convert Bryce to, that the phenomenon is not just about UFOs and aliens. It's about the afterlife, and it's about the paranormal, and that it's all interconnected. And so we're going to be looking at some of those connections, right? Because some of them have affected us over the years, right? Not just seeing a UFO or not just encountering an alien, but these other aspects. And I think at the heart of it is consciousness. And that's going to be one of our recurring characters that we discuss. And so I think when you think about all of the things that we're going to be examining, you realize we need more than 36 episodes to really do this investigation properly. But for right now, we've got 36. Starting next week, it's going to be coming out every week.
Yeah, thank you, iHeart. Hey, I just for fun, Ryan, I'm going to end with a piece of trivia for you.
Okay.
All right. What was the title of the first flying saucer film ever made?
Wasn't it The Flying Saucer?
Yes. Congratulations.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to
Thank
give Ryan a prize. Where can we send it?
We need to send them a Sound, Light, and Frequency t-shirt.
Yes, we don't have them yet, but when we have them, man, you're going to get one. Isn't that wonderful?
Wait till I get back to the U.S. to send it. I don't want you shipping it over to Osaka. Yeah.
The amount of people who would actually get that right are very small. So that actually shows that either you need to go get a life or that you're very well read. And
or both,
like us. Anyway, congratulations. Ryan, it's always fun talking to you, and I really thank you for taking the time with us, and to all your listeners and viewers, thank you, folks, and we'll see you on the podcast.
No, thank you, guys. Again, links are in the show notes to everything for the podcast. Guys, go check it out. Subscribe, follow, comment, leave reviews. You guys know how that goes with new podcasts. It truly makes a huge difference. Yeah. So do all of that for Sound, Light, and Frequency. And guys, thank you. Thank you for your time. And I cannot wait to listen to all 36 episodes. So thank you once again for coming on.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm out of here.
We're out of there too. See you all later. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Somewhere in the Skies is part of the Somewhere podcast universe. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To learn more about all of our shows, visit thespu.com.
Spectrovision Radio.